So welcome to my YouTube channel. That's what we call the good life. Today I'm going to be talking about how you can look after your tomatoes and common diseases and questions that people have. If you've not already subscribed to my channel, if you could please do so, because you'll get lots of helpful hints and tips all throughout the year from my home garden, my allotment, and from time to time my home kitchen. Now most people, tomatoes are the first things people start with, but they actually can be a little bit tricky to look after. So I thought it would be really easy to do a simple video to show you roughly how you need to do that. Now there's two types of tomato plants. There's the bush variety and the cordon variety. Now the bush variety you don't need to prune, but the cordon variety you need to take the side shoots out. And I thought the easiest way to show you how to take the side shoots out and how to explain to you how a tomato grows is to actually look at a tomato plant. So what you have in a tomato plant is you have the main stem growing up through the middle, and then off that stem comes the main leaves and the fruit that comes off, obviously with the flowers on it. So anything that grows in between a leaf and the main stem needs to be removed. So as you can see, I've taken that one out. So if we look at this one here, we've got the main stem. So we've got the main stem, we've got a leaf, and we've got a side shoot just there. And that's what you're looking at taking out. So let's find another one. Got one just over here that I saw, I believe. Yeah, we've got another one over here. So again, you've got the main stem growing up and you've got a side shoot. I might actually leave that one in there because that one seems to have stopped. With some varieties they stop, and sometimes you rely on a side shoot towards the top to carry on. So we'll leave that one where it is. I think, oh there we go, there's a perfect example. So here we have the main stem growing up, we have a leaf coming out there, and then we have a side shoot just there, and that needs to come out. When you're getting close to the top, be careful when you take side shoots out, because you might end up taking the main tip out. So when they're very close to the top, I'd leave them in there until you're sure whether it's a side shoot or the top of the plant. But the lower ones are really easy to take out. I've been taking my side shoots out a little bit too effectively, which means I haven't got that many to show you. But hopefully you get the idea. So you've got, let's just explain it again, you've got the main stem going up, the leaf going out, and then anything that comes out in between you take out. And that will help the plant grow far more effectively and produce tomatoes. So that's one thing. Also feeding tomato plants as well. I just use a really good quality tomato feed. It says to feed them every other week. So just roughly follow the instructions on the packet. If you're not sure what tomato feed to use, we do have an allotment shop on an Amazon, in our Amazon shop. So if you want to take a look at that and see what feed we use, then obviously you can do that if you want to. Let's head off into the greenhouse, and I'm going to look at some other bits. So I've actually not got some of the common problems this year, which I normally do. So don't think that I don't get any of these issues that other people get. But something an awful lot of people get is blossom end rot. Now what blossom end rot is, when you turn the bottom of the tomato over, oh I've just broken one off, whoops. Sometimes you get like a brown mark on the underneath of it. Now I actually can't find any on mine, and I've had a little bit of a look, but when you get blossom end rot, it generally means that they're not being watered enough. You know, it can more often happen when they're in grow bags or in pots, but it can still happen in the ground, and it does more often happen with larger tomatoes than it does with smaller tomatoes. So basically, if you're getting little brown patches underneath, it's just inconsistent watering. You need to water them a little bit more. That's actually why I often only grow certain varieties, and I don't grow many larger tomatoes, because I do find some varieties more susceptible. I'm completely amazed I haven't got it this year, because it's been ridiculously dry, and I don't think I water that much, but at the moment I seem to have escaped it. Something else people see is blossom drop. Now that's when, now I do think I've got some of that on some of them, but will I be able to find it on one? Oh, there we go, is when the whole blossom drops off. So you see you've got the blossom there, and which will then turn into a tomato when the whole blossom drops off. So basically means pollination hasn't taken place. So water regularly and spray the flowers in the morning and tap the plants to aid pollination. If I'm honest, you will always get a few that do that. So if you're like me, and most of them have done what they're doing, I wouldn't worry if the odd few drop off unless you're getting a lot. You're gonna lose a few. Do you know what I mean? So I wouldn't sweat about it too much. So the other common issue is something called dry set, which basically means that the tomato starts to form but doesn't swell out. I can't actually see that I've got that much of it here. But what it is, basically it starts to form but never completely fills out. And that means that it's due to trouble due to the air being too hot and too dry when pollination takes place. And again, you can spray around the plants to try and stop that from happening. So I do normally have a little bit of it, but I can't actually see that much of it at the moment, if I'm honest. But that's another one that happens. So tomato blight is another one, but at the moment, because it's so hot, none of us have any worries about that. But it is something to bear in mind as the coming months come in, which is something that I will move on to with regards to removing some of the leaves, and also split fruit, which is inconsistent watering. So if your fruit starts to split, which generally you don't get it so much now, it's more when they start to ripen, that's basically inconsistent watering. And when they're outside, there's nothing you can do about that. If it rains a lot, you might get a little bit of that. Now with tomato, well, they call it potato blight, but I'll call it tomato blight when it's on the tomatoes, is when the fruit literally starts to rot, and that's really quite serious indeed. So you really want to prevent that from happening. Although there's no worry about it happening at the moment, I think in most parts of the UK, because it's so incredibly hot and we're not getting that really damp and humid weather, it's best to take control of the plants now, so that if we do get that kind of weather, which we probably will do at some point, your plants stand the best chance of surviving. Now the way I do that is, one of the big things with blight is always having your tomatoes in quite a nice sunny area, because that also helps to stop the tomato blight from taking hold and means you get more sunlight to the tomatoes. So if you get an incident of the blight being around, then it's less likely to take hold, which is why I have my tomatoes where I have my tomatoes. The other thing is to create really good air circulation. So I see some people planting their tomatoes really close together, and also in squids or squares or grids. Now that again isn't very good, because you can't get the air around it, so it's better to do a row like I've done out there and in here. You're less likely to get it in a greenhouse, but it can still happen. But one of the things I do, as soon as each truss of fruit has formed, I remove the leaves below the trusses of fruit. So like on here, and it does two things. It also helps with the ventilation, it also helps with speeding and ripening up. So you literally, and it seems really, really brutal, you take the leaves off below each completed truss of fruit. So it does mean by the end of the season all you have is a stem with a few little leaves on the top, but it really, really does work, because it helps get that ventilation round, and it also helps the fruit ripen as well. So literally, you know, I've got completion, I mean, I've got a few that haven't, but I kind of make the decision that when they get that big, if a couple on the end haven't turned into tomatoes, they're not going to. So if I take that is completed, so I can take all the leaves off below, just like that, and I'll go around all my tomatoes at some point, and I will be doing that, because it's good for the tomatoes to help them ripen, and it's also good to stop disease and helps the air circulation go round. So that is a really big top tip of helping with tomato blight. Keep them in a sunny area, and to take the leaves off as the fruit starts to form. So the other thing that you obviously must do with your tomatoes is obviously keep tying them up. Outside I've obviously got them on canes and I'm tying them up, but in here I've put some pins in the ground, which again are available on our Allotment Shop. We've just got string going up, and then we've got this big bit of kind of like washing up line across here, and we're actually twisting it around and holding them up using this in here. So constantly keep either twisting them up around here or tying them around with string to support them, because if you don't support them, at some point they'll just flop over and then they'll just damage. So obviously keeping them well watered. They're all depending whether you've got them in pots or in the ground. All depends how much you need to water them. If they're in pots, once they start to fruit, you're probably going to have to water them every day, all depending how big your pots are, even sometimes twice a day when it's really, really hot, or if you've got them in grow bags. If you've got them outside in the ground, to be honest, I water them probably every 3 days. in the greenhouse, somewhere in between when they're planted in the ground, because obviously they can still take some moisture from the ground, but they're not getting any that's coming down from the sky. So I probably water them probably like every other day, or even maybe every third day. You kind of have to use your common sense really as to whether you think they need it or not. The other thing you obviously need to do is you obviously need to feed your tomato plants. A really good quality tomato feed is an absolute must. You feed them roughly every couple of weeks, and again, sometimes if you put them in pots, some people feed them a little bit more in pots. But the instructions are on the back of all the feed packets, but it's really important you use a specialist tomato feed, because it really does help with the production of the bloom and helping the tomatoes grow really, really well and taste good. So we have got an Amazon allotment shop, and we will put a feed that we use in there. So if you want to, you can get that, or you can just head off to your local garden centre and pick some up there. The other thing we do is Epsom salts, and this is something that someone showed me how to do years and years ago. So I buy a tub of Epsom salts off the internet. Well, from Amazon actually, which you can find in the allotment shop. I use it for two things. I actually use it for my tomatoes, and I actually put it in the bath. So I buy a great big sack full, and we use it for having baths with, but we also use it for our tomato plants. And all I do is I just shake a little bit of Epsom salts around the base of the tomato, like that, nothing fancy, and then I just water it in. So if it was outside, obviously it can just rain itself in, and I just kind of like alternate between tomato feed and doing a little bit of Epsom salt. So I just gently sprinkle what is about a tablespoon around the base of the plant, and I find that really helps the tomatoes. I think it makes them taste better. Some people say it's a myth, but since I've been doing that, I think they actually taste a lot nicer. So I do hope my hints and tips on growing tomatoes have been useful. I hope it's going to help you grow some absolutely amazing tomatoes this year. If you've got any great ideas or things that you do that make your tomatoes grow really, really well, I'd love to hear from you.